What's up, everyone? Raphael Garcia here. Last couple weeks on the MMA Ratings Podcast, Roy and I have had some scheduling conflicts, and with World Cup and trying to have some kind of life going on, there's been so much that we've missed out on that we haven't had a chance to talk to you about. So, we will be more consistent after this week. We definitely apologize for that here at MMA Ratings. That's our fault. So, just wanted to jump right in things and talk about this past weekend of MMA action. We had a doubleheader last night with two UFC events being held on the same day. Basically the same day. There was one very early, very late slash early Friday night, Saturday morning, and then another fight night card Saturday evening. So we're going to start off with, just looking at some of the points of interest from both cards. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that we saw that stood out to me. So I'm going to start with the Fight Night Tahuna versus Marquardt card. I'm going to start right at the main event with Nate and James. Looking at it, I'm not surprised with the outcome. I honestly thought that Tahuna was going to win because I haven't been too fond on how Nate has looked over the last couple of events. He's when he was down at welterweight, he was being pretty much manhandled by some of the top guys in the weight class. He had lost three straight, going back to when he lost his Strikeforce welterweight title to Tarek Safadine at their last event, and then he lost to both Jake Ellenberger and Hector Lombard. So it was not the greatest of outings for the former middleweight title challenger. So he goes back up to 185, and he looked very good against James Tahuna. But again, James the isn't the top of the middleweight division in any shape or form. Actually, he was coming down from 205 to make his debut at 185 as well, and Nate finished him with a armbar in the at the 4 minute mark, 4:34 of the first round. So the 35-year-old picks up his first win in almost 2 years. Actually, his last win was back in July of 2012. So his first time winning in almost 2 years. Tahuna, he now drops three straight fights. He's been finished in the first round of the last three fights he's had. He's lost to Glover Teixeira, Shogun Hua, and now Nate. So I would not be surprised if he's cut from the organization. He's somebody that I thought had a lot of promise, especially with the four-fight win streak he was on. But I'm kind of sad if he does get cut. He's someone I think that has that fight-stopping power that is always good to see in the UFC. But he hasn't been able to put that on showcase at all in his last three fights. And now, we got to look at what's next for Nate Marquardt. If he's going to go back on a run, again, like I said, he's 35 years old, so he might be a little bit, I don't want to say too late for him, but I hope that it would be nice to see him go on another run, especially with the way he's struggled with, his TRT issues back in the past. He wasn't actually, Dana White actually said he was never going to fight in UFC again. So we'll see Well, we've seen that be turned around, and now we're going to have to wait and see how well he does with this second chance. So the next person I think would be interesting enough for him to fight would be someone like maybe a Tim Bosch or someone around those lines, someone who's also been struggling as of late, or even a Mark Munoz, someone who struggled and has reached some good points, but just hasn't been able to put it all together. That's someone who I think would be good for him to fight next. Tahuna, again, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets cut from the organization, but it would be good to see him stay around. But I'm not sure who the UFC will put him up against next, if he's going to stay at 185 or if he's going to go back up to 205. I believe he stays at middleweight, but we'll see what's next for him as well. The fight that I was looking forward to off of both cards this past weekend was the Charles Oliveira Hatsuki matchup, and I don't think they disappointed at all. Do Bronx won in the second round via a modified anaconda choke. I was definitely impressed, being a jiu-jitsu practitioner myself, seeing him hit something that he definitely he had to modify that for his height because a short guy just cannot get that type of choke in place. So with him being 5'10", that's definitely a career defining win for him so far in at this point in his career. Hatsuki is definitely a name at featherweight, even though his UFC run hasn't been that great. That is Charles' best win so far to date. He's only 24 years old, and I've been impressed with this guy since he came into the UFC. He's struggled against the top of both the lightweight and the featherweight division. He's lost to Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone, Cub Swanson, and Frankie Edgar, four guys who are definitely within the top 10 of both weight classes. But he's just 24, so that gives him a lot of time to improve over the next couple of years and see where he is really ready to end up, especially at featherweight. He's 5'11". He's going to have the reach advantage over most guys. He's ultra aggressive with his striking. It's getting better every time. And then when he goes to the mat, you can't really mess with him there because he's hitting submissions, and it's like exciting submissions as well too. So he's one of those guys where it's not just a rear naked choke every time out. He's hitting triangles, anaconda chokes, calf slicers. He's hitting just about anything that he wants. So it'll be good to see what the UFC does with him next. I think this is a fight that could help place him within the top 10 to 15 of his weight class if he wasn't already that high up. I know with MMA ratings he wasn't ranked in the top 15, but seeing how he defeated Hioki, who was in the 15th position, this would be an opportunity for him to take at least that spot there. So looking at the division as a whole, I think that he should be placed up against someone. I would love to see them make that rematch with Nick Lentz. He was beating Nick Lentz at 155 when they fought in 2011, and then he hit a illegal knee, and they had to stop the fight. That's definitely something I would like to see them do if they wanted to do that rematch. Nick Lentz is coming off of that loss to Chad Mendes a couple months back, so this is actually no. He fought Manny Gambirian last. My fault. I apologize. So that would be a good fight to see, or even a Chang Sung Jung to see him face off against him as well. I think that Oliveira is going to be someone to watch in the featherweight division, and he's worth our time. So, or even man, could you imagine if they pit him against Conor McGregor if he wins his next fight against Diego Brandao coming up? So that's something else to look forward to as well. And for Hioki, he has so much hype coming around him, even for myself as he came into the UFC before he fought George Roop in 2011, and he just hasn't delivered. This is his fourth loss in the octagon. He's gone, let me see, he's gone 3-4 since being brought in by Zuffa, and he just hasn't looked like the guy who was one of the top featherweights before he was brought in. I mean, he has a laundry list of guys he's beaten, from Marlon Sandro to he's beaten Mark Hominick before, Jeff Curran. No, he's beaten Mark Hominick twice. Jeff Curran. So many guys he's beaten that are prominent names within the weight class, and now he just looks like, I don't want to say a shell of himself. He looks like he just can't deal with the type of fighters that are available in the UFC. And I honestly believe he was winning this fight against Do Bronx before he got caught with that choke. So I think he still has some value in the organization, especially with them trying so hard to break into the Asian market. So I hope they keep him around. But again, he's another name that I would not be surprised if he was cut after his performance this weekend. Some other names of some guys who kind of stood out to me just from the UFC fight that was in Australia. Robert Whittaker looked good. I'm still high on Neil Magny as well, watching him get better every outing. So he's someone else I think is worth watching. He had a KO win this past weekend, and Gian uh, Vellante took that split decision. I think he's someone who's going to continue growing in the sport as well. I think he's going to be one of those guys who just kind of hangs around and isn't necessarily going to break into like the top 10. But I I think he will be pretty tough, a tough out for anyone. He had that ridiculous fight against Fabio Maldonado earlier this year where he just kept coming forward and forward and forward after winning the first round but gassing out. So that's someone who I think will hang around for a little while. It'll be interesting to see what he will do next up. So I'm going to move on from there, and then we're going to talk about the Cub Swanson and Jeremy Stevens card, which was Saturday evening as well. And what we can take away from this event. First things first, you got the main event where Swanson took the unanimous decision over Stevens after 25 minutes of action. This is Swanson's sixth win in a row, I believe, and he's trying to push his way back up to a contenders spot. But yeah, it's the sixth win in a row. And I think what makes it so tough for him is that he's lost to both Chad Mendez and Jose Aldo, and he lost in one-sided fashion. This was years ago, though. Like, he lost to Mendez back in 2010 and Aldo back in 2009. So I think it's been long enough to where a rematch can be made against either one of those guys. I would like to see him placed against the winner of the Frankie Edgar and BJ Penn fight, which is this coming Sunday, the 6th. I think that'll be a good fight either way for him. A good stylistic matchup. I think either one of those guys can beat him, or Swanson can definitely defeat any one of those two guys as well. So I think that would be a type of fight that I would like to see coming up next. Stevens kind of re-emerged as a featherweight. He looked good in his last three outings. I think Jeremy Stevens is always going to be one of those gatekeeper type guys who doesn't necessarily crack the top 15, the top 10, but he's someone that you need to beat to get there. He's always looked good as a lightweight. I thought I wouldn't have been surprised if he took the win against Anthony Pettis back at UFC 136, and he looked better over time, even though he had lost three straight at 155 and decided to drop down to 145. So I'm not going to give up on this guy yet. So what I would like to see next for him, maybe they could make that fight against if they kept Oliveira, kept using him, building him up slowly. Maybe Stevens is a guy he can fight next. Maybe he can even fight Hioki if they keep him around within the organization. There's a lot of guys at 145 that he could be used against. Heck, and I know he's coming off of a loss, and Cub is a big name, but I think he will be a great. Excuse me, not Cub, but I know Jeremy will be a great promotional matchup against a Conor McGregor as well too. I think they will do a fantastic job promoting any fight that they were placed in against each other, and they will definitely hype that up tonight. And that could be something of a co-main event for a Fox event or a Fox Sports or even a Fight Pass card. That's something I would definitely watch for sure. So let's look at the rest of the card. Kelvin Gaston continues to improve since leaving the Ultimate Fighter. Even though he didn't make weight, he needs to get that weight issue under control. He was almost 3 pounds over, and that's something that you don't want to start dealing with. We've seen that be a problem for guys like Anthony Johnson. I think Diego Brandao is one guy, or John Lineker has struggled with weight issues. So you don't want to get this. You don't want to get out of control with the weight early in your career. He had to forfeit 20% of his purse over to his opponent, and that's not. This isn't a sport where fighters can continuously afford to do that. Ricardo Lamas got back on the win path with defeating Hakan Diaz. Since this is his first fight back since getting basically walked over by Jose Aldo earlier this year, so I could do that. Clint Hester picked up another win as well since leaving Tough. Is a split decision, and he got his hand raised there. I think he's someone that's slowly growing within the sport as well too. Joe Ellenberger finally had the opportunity to win in the UFC and make his debut after so many guys dropped out of fights with him, and he took a split decision win. Cody Gibson is another name that came in with a lot of hype, and he took the TKO win in 38 seconds over Johnny Bedford. he's a name that comes up a lot in MMA, just like conversations amongst hardcores. So he's someone that's worth watching and seeing what the UFC does with him next. And he's 12-4, just 26 years old. He's a 5'10" bantamweight, which is crazy to be that tall and only weigh 135 pounds. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next with him. But those are like the big points I would take from this fight night card and just from the weekend as a whole. I think the UFC is they're pumping out a lot of shows. We have two more this coming weekend. Let's see, we have this weekend. I think we have UFC 175 along with UFC. Let's see. This weekend we have UFC 175, Weidman and Machida, and then UFC The Ultimate Fighter 19 finale. This is like back-to-back Saturday and Sunday cards. So it's going to be another good weekend of MMA action. Definitely a lot going on. It will be interesting to see the Weidman. I feel like what's interesting though is that even, man, this card is a week away. I feel like it hasn't really been hyped up as much as some of the other cards in the past. I'm going to look forward to the pay-per-view numbers and see what they're going to be, because they need someone to step up on their roster and try to recoup some of these losses that they're taking when it comes to pay-per-view numbers. And Chris Weidman and Ronda Rousey are two of those people that they expected to do so, but with both of them being on this card, it's almost as if it hasn't been getting promoted the same way. I haven't really seen any commercials for it. Haven't seen really just too much of a promotion as well. I think Machida's going to be an interesting matchup for Weidman. Weidman's going to be the favorite coming into the fight, but Machida's dealt with wrestlers who's just as good as he has. In Rashad Evans is the first guy that comes to mind. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here in this fight. There, I would not count Lyoto out at all. I think he would be a huge upset if he takes the win, and I think, man, that'll be crazy. I wonder how the UFC would respond to that. Same thing with the Rousey Alexis Davis fight. Alexis is someone who fight fans may not know. They may not be familiar with her, but her jiu-jitsu is really, really good. She had an excellent match with Kira Gracie last, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, where she almost submitted her to begin with, but Kira was able to get out and pass a guard. For those who don't know, Kira is probably considered, or she was widely considered, one of the best female grapplers in the sport today. She had multiple-time world champion, and Alexis Davis was definitely put her in a bad position. So she's trained to deal with the type of arm bars that Rousey uses. So we'll see if she has the grappling ability to stave off those attempts that we all know is coming. And this is a big fight for Rousey as well, because it'll be her 10th pro bout, but also she's getting ready to make a lot of those movie commitments that she's going to be taking probably for the rest of this year. One thing I'm really looking forward to is the return of Stefan Struve. He was a favorite of mine because he's one of those guys who's going to go a heavyweight that's going to go out there and finish a fight or get knocked out trying. And we remember seeing him. He was dealing with that heart condition that almost took him out of the sport completely, especially at just 26 years of age. He was on a 4-fight win streak until he was knocked out by Mark Hunt back in 2013. So it's good to see him back. I'll be happy to look forward to watching him fight Matt Mitrione. I think that's going to be another fight. That fight's not going all 15 minutes. Someone's going to get knocked out there. And and even Struve has 16 submissions, 17 KOs, so he can finish this fight any way he needs to. So that'll be a fight worth watching at UFC 175 as well. That also will have Uriah Hall up there. Uriah Faber's on the prelims for the first time in his career, which is crazy, as he's fighting Bruce Leroy at 135. I think this is a big fight as well because Faber will always be considered one of the top 10 guys in the bantamweight division, top 5. And if he pulls off another win, will he be on the short list to fight his teammate in TJ Dillashaw? They made comments that they would fight each other if they were paid correctly, and it'll be interesting to see if they can make that fight happen. But first, he has to get by Bruce Leroy, who will be a major underdog coming into this fight. This is probably his biggest fight of his career as well. I'm looking forward to seeing also Kevin Casey, who just won, I believe, the RFA middleweight title. I believe he is stepping back into the octagon and fighting Bubba Bush. So they may not be names that you're very familiar with, but Kevin Casey actually just stepped in on 30 minutes notice at Metamoris 3 to fight Keenan Cornelius and got heel hooked in a couple of seconds, which was crazy, but he took that fight on half an hour's notice. So he's someone I'm looking forward to seeing how well he does getting back under the big lights. And then also next weekend we have the Ultimate Fighter finale card where Penn and Edgar are fighting for the third time. And this time they're fighting at 145 after coming off of a season of the Ultimate Fighter. It should be pretty interesting to see how that fight goes down. Edgar, even though he's 1-2 against Penn, everyone's still going to be rallying behind BJ Penn to kind of see him make that return to who he is. But, you're not really sure how that's ever going to come back. He hasn't quite looked like himself in his last couple of fights. This is his first fight at 145, too, so we're not really sure how that weight cut is going to hamper him. The Dustin Ortiz and Justin Scoggins fight at 125, too, is a big fight for that weight class, who is still trying to develop some type of steady stream of contenders, so that's worth watching as well. Kevin Lee and Jesse Bronson is another good fight. So, there's a lot of action going on, but that doesn't mean like these fights are worth missing. I think there's going to be some value to be had from every event this week coming up. So be sure to order your pizza early, pick up your beer, pick up your liquor if you're more of a hard liquor guy like myself, and just enjoy some good MMA. There's a lot of good other news that has come out of the combat sports world. Of course, you had the retirement of Chael Sonnen, but he's already getting back into the action because he is going to be on the Metamoris 4 card. I believe it's set for August 9th, August 9th in LA, where he will be grappling against Andre Galvao. I don't know how they got him to agree to that fight. They must have paid him a good amount of money, because Galvao has the ability to put someone's leg on backwards, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did that to Sonnen at some point during their grappling match. Josh Barnett is also going to be on that card. He's taking on Dean Lister, who's someone that MMA fans may be familiar with, but he wasn't that successful in MMA, but his grappling acumen is insane, so I'm looking forward to seeing that fight as well. A friend of mine actually may be competing on that card too, but I can't announce any information about that because it hasn't been fully announced yet. And to go along with that, there's also that big news that came out with Bellator, with Scott Coker taking over as president after Bellator founder and CEO Bjorn Rebney was removed from he resigned, but the rumor was always going to be that he was removed from the position. So it's interesting to see what that promotion does next. This is Coker's second chance in building up a combat sports organization. He did well with Strikeforce, so let's see if he can do the same thing this time around with Bellator. And with MMA Ratings, we have a lot going on, so just stay tuned to MMAratings.net to see what we have going on. I have a couple of interviews that I'm looking to post this coming week, and I have some more that I'm planning on putting together. I hopefully can get one with some grapplers and some fighters as well, and some other personalities in the combat sports world. And Roy, Adam, and Nathan will continuously be putting their pieces out this week. So be sure to follow us on Instagram now. You follow us on Twitter, Facebook, as well as visiting the website just to see the content that we're putting out. And again, this is Raphael Garcia, and I thank you for listening to me talk about MMA this week. We'll be back at full strength. Roy and I will sit and go over just UFC 175 and the Ultimate Fighter 19 finale, and just sit and chop it up about MMA combat sports as a whole. So thank you again, and have a great week.